afternoon, and welcome to the Challenge of Democracy, Elections and Voting. I'm excited to host today's nonpartisan discussion that will focus on two concepts. The first is the right to vote is one of the most important rights of American citizens. Many fought hard to obtain it, so we should not take it for granted. The second is history sets the context for the present. Throughout 2020, we've experienced many twists and turns, a pandemic, a discussion about the impact of race and what it has on the society, and a jarring ride on Wall Street and Main Street, just to name a few. Each has left us feeling like we've never experienced this before, and each is expected to affect this year's elections. However, as a country, we've encountered these issues in the past, albeit some with more success than others. To consider whether we have learned anything from our past, I've invited one faculty member from the School of Education and Social Sciences and two faculty members from the School of Arts and Humanities, who will give us a historical spin on today's elections and voting process. I think you will find today's presentation to be enlightening. So please remain muted and turn your camera off. We will be sharing a slide presentation during this session. We recommend that you choose the side-by-side mode from view options in Zoom so that you can see the speakers and the presentation at the same time. Pay attention to the chat, since I will share some information with you there. If you have questions, we encourage you to use the chat function. We are recording today's presentation and will post it on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion website. Now I will turn the program over to Dr. Michael Baston, the college president and an adjunct in the paralegal and political science departments, who is serving as the moderator for today's conversation. Dr. Baston.
Thank you, Melissa, and welcome to each and every one of you on the Challenge of Democracy, Elections and Voting. We have an extraordinary group of panelists today, including Dr. David Lucander, our Associate Professor in the School of Education and Social Sciences, Professor Konstadinos Ritsatos, the instructor in the School of Arts and Humanities, and Dr. Christina Stern, who's an assistant professor in the School of Arts and Humanities. I am so glad to have these extraordinary panelists with me today, and we are going to have a wonderful conversation about the challenge of democracy. But to start off our time together, well, let's start with a poll. We want to get a sense from all of you. Do you plan to vote in the 2020 United States presidential election? And if you answer yes, what method do you plan to use to vote in the 2020 United States presidential election? So we want you now to take a chance and answer these questions, and we'll get right back to the answers and the questions. Do you plan to vote in the 2020 United States presidential election? And if you answer yes, what method do you plan to use to vote in the 2020 United States presidential election? In person on election day, in-person early voting, which is happening in the state of New York right now, or absentee voting, which of course must be postmarked by no later than November 3rd. So just give us a second for you to be able to answer those questions, and let's see exactly where we find ourselves. And I want to tell you, we've got lots of good folks here with us who are listening in. If you have questions along the way, we will have an opportunity to ask our panelists some questions from the audience. You just put those questions in the chat feature, and that's where we will ultimately be able to do it. So let's see what happened. How do people play? Well, here, overwhelmingly, our folks, 97% says they do plan to vote in the 2020 presidential election. And it's pretty interestingly divided in terms of in-person, which got the most votes at 39%, and then in-person early voting, which has about 35%, and then 26% on the absentee voting. Thank you so much. Now, while you're watching this panel, what you'll notice is that information about different questions that may come up will also show up in the chat feature. So as time goes on, please look into the chat feature. You'll see as an example how we've extended hours for voting in Rockland County and guidelines for absentee voting. So please take a look at that. Well, let's get into it. I want to have some questions now for our panelists. And I want to start with Christina. Christina, what is the earliest example of citizens participating in their government?
Okay, so thank you for the question, Dr. Baston, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today in today's panel. So basically, the short answer is this. The history of people having a say, large numbers of people having a say in the political process, that is a radical concept. It's relatively recent. When we look at history, we see thousands of years of history of kings, emperors, monarchs, dukes, princes. These are basically authoritarian figures, and for the most part, they are not terribly interested in hearing what the people have to say. And it's really only in the last 250 years ago or so that we start to see the development of new ideas, literally revolutionary ideas, where people start to say no to kings, where modern thinkers emphasize that the people more broadly have something to contribute to society, and that we have the right to participate in decision making. The language of rights, of course, is interwoven with these developments. And as you know, there are whole revolutions connected with the development of these ideas and with the development of democratic structures in the modern world, right? And of course, that's the American Revolution and the French revolutions in the end of the 1700s. Now, there had been some glimmers of democratic thinking before in earlier centuries. In particular, we think of ancient Athens, sure. Which is iconic, really, of early democracy. And of course, our English word democracy derives from its Greek etymological roots, krasi meaning rule, and demos, the people, so rule of the people. But the thing is, ancient Greek democracy in many ways is more of an ideal. It's very limited by our standards. Women were not able to vote in the ancient context. And in ancient Greece, like most ancient societies, you have slavery, and slaves by definition are not allowed to vote. So the idea, the glimmer of democracy was there in ancient Greece, but it was quite limited, certainly by our standards.
Well, it's interesting. I guess it would be limited by our standards today. But once you think about the colonial period, it actually is reminiscent of the beginning of our founding principles here. Dino, why did elections, for example, during the colonial period in America enjoy high voter turnout? Because it seems like a natural sort of the glimmers that we saw in the first discussion sort of had a different connotation here in America.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that question, Dr. Baston, and thank you for hosting this event. And thank you to everyone who showed up. This is obviously a very important moment in our history. It's history in the making, and I hope this is a very enlightening experience for everyone. In the colonial period, it's a very unique series of events that are taking place. And if you look at the broader picture of colonies and politics, our system, when I say our, I'm referring to the 13 colonies, it's very unique, it's very exceptional. The Spanish, the French would not dare allow anyone to vote. It was forbidden in every sense of the word. It was an absolute system of government, and whatever the king said went. So the king would appoint usually a family member or somebody close, and he would give the king's orders and represent the king in the colonies, and that was it. It was there no ands, ifs, buts. That's how the system ran. So the early English colonies had a very, very exceptional rule to this. And the dynamics behind that really can be rooted in the events that are going on in England in the centuries prior to the colonies, primarily with wealthy landowners gaining more privileges in the government and being allowed to share power and morphing into what becomes parliament. So when the colonies are formed in the 1600s, in the early 1600s, these ideas are transplanted to the colonies, the ideas in which people can share in the power and in the politics, in the political system. Again, very, very exceptional. But in looking at the colonial system, it was more open, ironically, than what was back in England, in that, you know, there was a greater share of representation and participation in the government. And it was a privilege that was reserved for a few. It was more restrictive in Britain. So the fact that it was, you know, more open, restrictive in our standards but in the strongest way, but much more open than what was back in Britain, became an appeal, and also was a what we would call like a pull factor that encouraged people to come. One of the many, many reasons. But it was, again, very restrictive in today's standards, and it was very localized. The governments of the colonies were very local. This is something that a lot of people today, we see things on the national level. We see, you know, presidential elections, but local politics are just as important. And the people in the colonies really paid attention to what went on in their localities, because the colonies really functioned as more or less separate governments from each other. And this was, again, something very, very restrictive and reserved for the privileged. So those who had the opportunity took full advantage of it, because the local governments are the ones who pass laws on taxes, pass laws on land ordinances, pass laws on, restrictions and things like that. So people were eager to partake in a system that gave everyone, you know, or should I say, the people who were able to take part in it,
right,
gave them opportunities that were, really very, very rare. But what's very unique is the side effect from that is that it made more people want to participate. It made more people eager to get involved, seeing how those who do have the luxuries and the privileges can, you know, come out as the beneficiaries. And this actually turned into local revolts in many instances. The best one would be the Bacon's Rebellion, which is 100 years prior to the American Revolution, where the motto was no taxation without representation. Mm-hmm. So again, very restrictive, but those who had that power took full advantage of it, and it made those around them who didn't have it advocate and champion for it, leading forward to the reform movements that bring us into the later centuries.
Thank you, Dino. David, are there any examples, historical or otherwise, where there was a correlation between high political or voter participation and increased citizenship, sort of the legal protections and local services?
Yeah, and there's a lot to build on here. And thank you for putting this event together. I know it's kind of the cliche that every panelist says with their first answer. But I do see on my participant list, I see a lot of student names. Just be aware that we are in abnormal times, and normally this is such a vibrant campus. So thank you for having an event that tries to keep us on track. You know, we've had such a rich campus life with the history and psychology and sociology departments putting together every few weeks these big panels where we ask a question and answer it from a lot of perspectives. We've brought in outside scholars from places like CUNY, Brooklyn, and Harvard, the criminal justice department. I mean, we've had the New York City chief of police come to our campus. So we have a rich campus life, and this is just one attempt to keep that going now. So this is awesome. In terms of voter turnout, you know, the first thing to think about is when we turn out. We're in a presidential election cycle. We tend to have higher turnout. We tend to have lower turnout for what we would call down ticket or down ballot elections. Sure. So when the ballot goes in, we get more people, but the local elections are the ones that are going to matter the most to us. When we elect our district attorney, we're electing the person who's going to choose to prosecute or recommend really long sentences when our sons and daughters run afoul of the law. When we elect the people who are on our zoning board, we're electing the people who determine how land will be used. And those are the people who are going to give a company permission to put toxic waste incinerators in our backyards, right? So these national elections get all the attention, but the local elections about alderman, city councilor, school board, those are the local elections that are going to matter the most to us in our day-to-day lives. So it's important for us as citizens in a democracy to always be engaged in having our voice heard, right? In our system, our elected officials, they are our voice, right? So we need to be there more than just checking in once every 4 years. Dino used the language, the luxuries and the beneficiaries of citizenship. And I think that's going to connect with looking at voter participation. And Dr. Stern, Christine Stern, talked about how in antiquity, women were not allowed to vote. Well, that's going to come back here too. So back in the day, turnout meant property owning white males, right? And that means your turnout is already going to look higher than it is because we're only looking at eligible voters. So women are not eligible. Apprentices are not eligible. Indentured servants, enslaved people, Native Americans living within the colonies in the States, they're not going to be part of the turnout. The first key to answering this question connects with what Professor Ritsatos was looking at in colonial America. In 1757, George Washington ran for the House of Burgesses in colonial Virginia. And his purchases in that campaign, I think, give us a good hint about why turnout was so high. And think about, again, who's invited to come to the table. I know RCC is a dry campus. We don't allow any alcohol. But at Mount Vernon, 1757, George Washington had 46 gallons of beer, 1 hogshead, 1 barrel, and 10 bowls of rum punch, 35 gallons of wine, 2 gallons of cider, 3.5 pints of brandy. He invited his neighbors to his lovely estate. And at these electioneering rituals, there'd be fiddling, dancing, wrestling, barbecue. And the hope was that the voters would reciprocate. So that local kind of connection of voting, I think, pushed people to choose to turn out. Now, I mentioned that voting was something exclusively in the domain of property owning white males. And that became problematic. You could have served the country that didn't even exist yet, fought in the American Revolution. And if you didn't own property, you don't have a vote in the country that you just risked your life to create. So by the 1820s, we had what you would call universal male suffrage, right? All males who are white could vote. And you see really high turnout. And at that point, President Jackson, Andrew Jackson, he harnesses the power of this new, excited, enfranchised electorate and, runs what we would now call a populist campaign, presenting himself as an outsider, as a man of the people. And he promised them, and he delivered on that promise. He said, elect me, I will kick the Indians out, and I will make land available cheaply. So you see higher turnout. We also see a fear of high turnout. When immigrants came to American cities like Boston and New York, Philadelphia, they lived in these immigrant enclaves. We see here an Irish whiskey barrel and a lager beer, right? This hints at the prevalence of Irish and German immigrants in the mid 1800s. Now, the fear of these immigrants was twofold, right? One is that they're drunk and rowdy, and notice that they're conspiring and running away with the ballot box, right? So the fear was that these immigrant communities are going to band together and cohesively vote for their own interest. Another issue that we see with the second flyer is something that connects to the civil rights movement. And in Mississippi, back in the day, things were bad in race. I mean, if you're looking at race relations in America, Mississippi is just like a dungeon. It's like, if you look at secession and slavery, it all comes to South Carolina. If you look at race, it all comes to Mississippi. And Mississippi back then was not good. But by the year 2000, Mississippi would have more African-American elected officials than any other state in America. And that's not just like state legislature, that's all the local offices. So there are instances when groups that were kind of marginalized or oppressed, when they got access to democracy, they wielded it for their interests.
Thank you so much, David. Very, very interesting point of view. Christina, When the United States was founded, the founders created a system of government in which the power to govern rests with the people. But elected officials represent their interests. Historically, what civilization influenced the American style of government?
Okay, so of course, what makes our government so interesting is that our founders, many of them at least, were incredibly well-educated people, and they drew upon a wellspring of different histories and different ideas. And so this wellspring of ideas ranges from ancient Greek philosophy with its ideas about natural law and the glimmer of democracy that we mentioned before, to various principles from Roman law, as well as practices of the Roman Republic and perhaps the Roman Empire as well. The founders also drew upon modern political thought, John Locke, as well as various Enlightenment thinkers from Britain, France, Germany, and elsewhere. And some historians have argued also that Iroquois governments may have had some influence on our government structures as well. And of course, if you go back to the Middle Ages, Magna Carta, some of the concepts about liberty are there also. So I think in terms of government structure, judicial, legislative, executive, and some of the ideas of republic, I think you could make the argument that the Romans are particularly important and are particularly reflected in our government structures here in the United States. But I would also at the same time make the argument that the strength of US government and law is that we reflect so many diverse influences over the centuries. So it's kind of like a shorter answer, but I wanted to just address that succinctly.
Thank you so much. Dino, during the election of the first president in 1789, only white male landowners were eligible to vote in most states. How has that right to vote expanded to the first presidential election from the first presidential election to now? How have things changed over time?
It's very interesting because this was actually touched on, the build-up to this was touched on in the previous questions. So it's great that we're following that sequence because Christina and David both touched on this as well. So it's a process that was brewing and developing in the colonial era where it was very restrictive to the wealthiest of the wealthy when it comes to who had the right to partake in the government, who can vote and who can be involved in the government. So as time went forward, this opportunity was expanded. And as David mentioned, by the 1820s, it became universal white male suffrage. And it set in motion the chain of events that led to the reform movements of more and more people championing and campaigning to expand that right. So it was something that in the colonial period, it's even interesting how, we look at our government today and, we have a presidential election, but when they created this government, they wanted checks and balances. They wanted separation of powers, but they were not thinking of the executive branch being the most influential. They were thinking about the legislative branch being the first among the equals. And that's really what they had in mind. And for many people in their mindset, that was what, was the most critical. It was something that as time went on, it was open to more and more people and set in motion the events that would lead to reform movements that would continue championing the expansion of voting rights. You have everything from the 14th and the 15th Amendments to the 19th Amendment, okay? Till even, voting up to the age of 18. I mean, it's a ongoing, never-ending, constantly evolving issue as our society progresses forward into the future. So it's something that began from traditional practices reserved as a privilege for the most affluent and gradually evolved and opened up more and more as time went on. And technically speaking, it continues. It has not ended. Thank you.
David, you know, originally the U.S. Constitution didn't establish who was eligible to vote. States determined who had the right to vote in local, state, and federal elections. What rules were enacted by states to restrict the rights of some U.S. citizens to vote, to Dino's point?
Well, as Professor Ritsatos was talking about, we have this expanding electoral base, right? It goes from property qualifications to simply a racial qualification, to all males, to females included, to lowering the age. And that makes me think of the wonderfully optimistic Martin Luther King when he says that the arc of the moral universe is long.
Yes.
And it bends towards justice. But I have to disagree with him because I'm a historian. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards uncertainty. And revolutions can go backwards, and progress is not linear. And we see with restrictions on people's rights, I mean, Eric Foner's book, Second Founding, he looks at the immediate years following the Civil War, and he argues quite compellingly that that's the moment where we made a modern definition, a modern construction of citizenship. We saw 3 amendments passed in rapid order: the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment.
Yes.
13th Amendment, 1865, abolishes slavery. 14th Amendment, 1868, due process and equal protection. 15th Amendment, 1870, black male suffrage, right? And if we follow the linear trajectory of that, what does it mean to be a citizen in a free republic? It means nobody owns you. It means you have equal protection. And the last and the third component means that you have a voice. In America, look, we are a fighting country. If you include all them small wars people don't pay attention to, Spanish-American War, the Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders, Panama. We've been at war for something like 3/4 of our nation's existence. I mean, we're
so true.
But we also fight with words. Look, it's a cliche to say that America is an idea, but it's a cliche because it's true. And from the moment Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense in 1776, we've been fighting over the idea of what is America and who can be an American. And access to the ballot is the final, and it's the pinnacle of being accepted as an American. So this is an intro to say that we have this 15th Amendment, and it says that your right to vote cannot be abridged by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So we found in what ended up happening was that there were ways devised to marginalize these newly enfranchised African-American voters. And it was done with a poll tax, which pushed poor people, regardless of their race, out of the ballot. The literacy test. You see examples here from 1965's Alabama literacy test. Thank you for the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We don't have to do this anymore. Imagine taking this test as an African-American in your town voting registrar's office in front of a belligerent official who's asking you, you got to know all this stuff? If a president is indicted for a crime, name 2 rights which he has. If you know the Bill of Rights, you would get this correct. A president is elected in the general election of November that takes office the following year on what date? How long? Number 9, does the enumeration of income tax level on various, you got to answer arcane constitutional trivia to vote. So the literacy test is a way to push people out of the ballot. And the third one is just evil genius, man. The grandfather clause. It says that if your granddaddy lived in this country and could not vote, you cannot vote. Now, of course, this means you can immigrate here from Italy, step off the boat, naturalize, you can vote because your granddaddy didn't live here. And who are the only people who had grandparents who lived in this country who couldn't vote? Enslaved people. And if I was born free, my granddaddy was a slave, I can't vote. And what does that mean for my descendants and all of their lineage, right? So there were mechanisms put in place to push people out of the ballot. And I think that tells us a lot about power and democracy in this society.
Thank you so much. Just powerful examples of what we need to be thinking about from a historical context, because when you have access to the right to vote, really, how do you ensure that you are engaging in that franchise that kept people, so many people, from the opportunity to exercise the rights that we have? That 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, when I was growing up, we remembered it as this way: free citizens vote. That 13th Amendment established freedom, and then the citizenship in the 14th, and of course, and most importantly, the right to vote. Let's go to our poll question. Let's get some of the thoughts that you all have. This poll question: do health and safety concerns related to the current pandemic factor into your voting plan for the 2020 United States presidential election? And are you concerned about the integrity or security of 2020 United States presidential elections? So just take a moment, in light of what we've seen about the structures and systems set up to determine how votes are limited, let's look at what you think about voting and voting concerns here for the 2020 presidential election. Just take a moment now, and would you please do that poll question for us? Are you concerned about the integrity or security of the 2020 United States presidential election? And so you can look at some of these answers. Yes, I'm concerned about the possibility of voter intimidation, chaos, or violence from poll watchers. Yes, I'm concerned about the distribution of false information about how to vote. Yes, I'm concerned about foreign influence. Yes, I'm concerned about the possibility of widespread voter fraud. Yes, I'm concerned about whether the votes will be counted accurately. No, I'm not concerned at all. I have full faith and confidence in this system. Thank you for the question.
I tried to answer the question, but its system does not allow the host or panelist.
Nope, we don't get a say. We don't get a say in this one, but let's see what folks have said. A lot of folks have had a chance now to weigh in, and let's see what are the results from this snap poll. Well, here we go. Do health and safety concerns related to the current pandemic factor into your voting plan? And so 74% say yes, this is something that we need to think about. Are you concerned about the possibility of voter intimidation, chaos, or violence from poll watchers? That seems to be a significant concern for at least more than half of the people here. But there are some that are really not concerned at all. And others who are thinking about sort of false information or foreign influence, or the possibility of widespread voter fraud, or that the votes won't be counted accurately. So there is still, even amongst the folks listening today, some concerns about sort of what this election will bring forth. I want to come back now to Dr. Stern, Christina Stern. Let me ask you a question. And that goes to this idea of the peaceful transfer of power. Very, very interesting topic. In response to a question from members of the U.S. House of Representatives, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, in the event of a dispute over some aspect of the elections, by law, U.S. courts in the United States Congress are required to dissolve any disputes, not the military. Has a head of state ever refused to leave office and allow for the peaceful transfer of power following a dispute over the elections? Has it ever happened?
So in this country at the presidential level, no. I mean, we do have lots of debates about presidential elections, especially in relation to the Electoral College. There was all the controversy in 2000 with Bush and Gore, which of course went to the Supreme Court. But one of the defining traits of United States history has been the holding of presidential elections every 4 years on a regular basis, and the peaceful transfer of power. Now, in some other parts of the globe, that has not always been the case, free elections and or peaceful transfer of power. But it has been a facet of the US political system and of our presidential history. And, you know, I was looking into this, some of the theory of political scientists and historians, and there's a consensus by the most respected historians on this topic, you know, historians who focus on the history of modern Western democracy, particularly the United States, that the peaceful transfer of power is non-negotiable. That is a baseline for democracy. It is a critical aspect, a defining aspect, a critical cornerstone, and you know that's been the history, and the consensus is that's you know that's what democracy is there is fair elections and a peaceful transfer of power.
And what about the election day results? Is there, you know, something that we have to be paying attention to?
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's the $1 million
Because
question.
there are some key dates usually between the vote and inauguration that we've just got to be paying attention to throughout this process, correct?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. I think what makes this election also tricky, I mean, we have to see sort of the role of media and how media calls this. You know, I mean, in the past for decades, it was just a much more orderly process at every step of the way, and you also didn't have social media and all these different voices out there claiming different truths and realities. Yeah, we will have to, you know, see how this works.
And I think we have a slide on the election day results, or no, I thought we had a slide on that, but basically talking about some of the key dates in terms of election day being November 3rd.
Oh, yes, right. And then when the electors cast their votes,
Yes.
and then if there are concerns, and then this goes to the court, I mean, so this will all happen within a few months, how this plays out.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's go back to now sort of, I want to talk a little bit about sort of how in recent times American elections have been influenced by foreign governments. How did the founders reduce the influence of foreign government, that a foreign government could be had over a president? And what measures can be taken to reduce the influence a foreign government could have on an election? This time I want to ask President Ritsatos to speak to that. Dino, would you speak to that, please?
Yes, absolutely. You know, it's very interesting because the founding fathers actually thought it in those words, you know, the fear of foreign influence in our government. So they imposed a lot of restrictions that would minimize the fruition of this fear coming to life. So one of the big restrictions, of course, is who is eligible to be a president. Okay, they didn't want someone who can just recently come here from another country to run for office. You would either have to be born here or be a naturalized citizen for a length of time to be eligible to run. And the basis behind that was, of course, they did not want to have any foreign interference. There was that fear. And, you know, we're a new country. And like any new country, you're going through moments of hardship, financial hardship. You're going through internal hardship, disagreement. So what you want to do is try to keep things together. And the last thing you want is outside influence. And our relations with Britain at that time were not that good. Okay, we don't really improve our relations with Britain until after the War of 1812. So there was this kind of fear that other outside forces, and France at the same time, who we were also in good relations with, at least up to a point, there was that fear that, you know, they could undermine or interfere in our election process or help steer it in a way where the side that they feel is more favorable to them, wins. So they did put in place mechanisms. It is important to note that the government at the same time also, at times in American history, the government used this kind of fear for its personal gain. So when you look at the Federalists, one of the early political parties in America, there was this attempt by them to minimize and restrict citizenship and voting basically, because and they used the whole banner of the Alien and Sedition Acts. There's foreign interference, foreign agents. So what they did is they further restricted the whole citizenship process and how one can become one. And they wanted to ensure that they have a stronger power hold. So there is the reverse there. I think that's also important to note. Now, fast forwarding to today, okay, our elections are very modernized. We're in the digital revolution, okay? Whether you want to go there or not, you're in it. You're in the digital revolution. Most of us pay our bills through our phones. Most of us don't even go to the bank anymore and wait in line. Everything is done digitally. Most of us don't even use money anymore. They're just digits on our phone or on our computer. So that's the world we're in, and the elections have followed in that pattern. The information is, computerized, and numbers and tallies are passed along in digital format in many cases. It used to be old-fashioned ways where people would literally count it and pass information. But in other cases, it's basically like you see today. It's all, very digitized. So this becomes convenient in the sense that it allows for a quicker result, you can, in theory, but at the same time, it becomes more vulnerable because it can be exposed through, vulnerabilities in cybersecurity and things of that sort. So in that sense, you do have, fear and legitimate fear. And what's an even bigger concern is the fact that much of the software that we're using is not the most recent or most up to date and hasn't been screened and protected. If you look at many of the primaries, it's a good, a sampler of what can go wrong because they're private elections primaries. They're run by the political parties. So in many instances, you've seen that the whole system crashes and you don't know results for days, if not weeks later. Okay, now what's to say that within that process, there could be some mischievous outside activity, both from within the country or from outside the country. It creates an opportunity for someone a vulnerability for someone to exploit. So it is something that needs to be looked after on a much, much greater level. What's also important to note is, our elections today. We're 50 states, okay? And in every state, the rules of how you vote vary. When you can vote, how long you can vote, your actual process, it's a paper ballot, it's the old Florida 2000 ballots where you puncture holes in it like a Scantron, but you puncture holes in it. So you have all these different methods in which how one votes. And this, of course, okay, becomes, an opportunity in some instances where vulnerabilities can unveil themselves and people can capitalize on those, which becomes problematic.
Thank you so much.
I would say that the government, they have to work together. There's got to be more cohesiveness between government and on the state and federal level to work together to streamline the election process, because as we go further, the vulnerabilities will only increase if antiquated software is not up to date and there's more oversight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love when coworkers join us, whether they're fur babies or whether it's our children. They add a flavor to our conversation. And it is important for us to think about foreign influence. And so that's on one side of the spectrum. But then there's another side of the spectrum in terms of thinking about, the security mechanisms for the election. So I want to ask this question to Dr. Lucander. David, some people want to introduce security mechanisms such as requiring a photo ID for all elections and limiting absentee balloting by requiring that voters provide a valid reason for not voting in person. Do these target particular segments of the electorate and serve to suppress voters' rights?
Wow, what a big question. I think the first thing to notice in this is just the patchwork that we have, right? The Constitution says nothing about voting. It was left for locals to figure out. Here in New York, you can vote in person, you can vote early, or you can vote by mail. I voted by mail, which was very easy. I simply had to point out that, there was a COVID risk in my life from my other job. So therefore I shouldn't go to the polling place. So it's pretty easy for me to vote by mail. Just moments ago on my phone, I got an update from a friend in Brooklyn. She's voting early. Took about an hour and a half, but the line was steady moving. So many people were in that line doing early voting in Brooklyn right now and masked up. Or you can vote in person traditionally on November 3rd. The way that we vote has evolved over time. And back in the day, we did a viva voce. This translates to the living voice. And you would do it in public. Whether you did a voice vote where someone calls on you and you say, I'm taking my stand with this candidate, or you did it in those old-fashioned traditions, dried corn or dried beans, and you'd put one in a box. No matter what, the ballot wasn't secret. The problem with this transparency, well, the good thing is you're never going to have voter fraud because it's totally transparent, but it leaves you open to coercion or intimidation if you're part of the minority. Now think about minority like the framers of our Constitution did. These minority factions, well, you're 49%, right? So we didn't get the ballot like we talk about until colonial New England. They had almost universal male literacy. So they had printed ballots. So you got this patchwork of how you vote and where. Then we get this concept of a secret ballot. It emerges because, party bosses like George Tweed and the Tammany Hall machine, these were horribly corrupt local political cabals. I mean, they were basically gangsters. And if you could vote against them, they would kidnap you, they'd beat you up. So we got this concept of a secret ballot. We took the idea from the Australian ballot. The way that we vote was invented by Australia in 1856, right? You go to a polling place, you're voting on a uniform government printed ballot. That ballot has the name of all of the candidates. There is privacy and secrecy. Massachusetts adopted this in 1888. New York adopted it in 1890. My point is this: the way that we vote has evolved over time. In my community, I'm in New York like you, we don't need to show an ID. You see us on this map, I'm using my mouse like you can see my screen, but you see on this map, you don't need an ID. The voting workers will look at how your signature matches up with the signature that they have on file. And President Trump's own commission that went to explore voter fraud of people voting twice, of false people voting, his own commission did research on this and found like no examples of it, right? So if we think about voting integrity, one of the things we might want to have is a uniform policy or a uniform law. The specific question that you asked was about a voter ID. That's fine with me. I have a job and a car and a driver's license. Who would a voter ID law maybe push out? People who are poor and don't drive. I mean, if you're poor and you don't drink alcohol, so you never get carded, you have no reason to have an ID like ever, right? So this can push out people who live in cities that don't drive. This can push out young people who are too young to vote. And I think when we look at voter ID, it seems like it makes sense. Like, I wouldn't really raise too much of an issue with it, but we also have to understand that for Black Americans who had fought so hard for the right to vote, they're going to react about any restrictions on voting the way that Second Amendment people are going to react about any restrictions of gun rights. There are certain groups in our country that are very sensitive to anything that hints at minimizing their presence at the ballot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to go back now to Dr. Stern. Christina, many people are worried about voting in person because of COVID-19 pandemic. Was there another time in our history when the electorate was forced to balance their right to vote against health and safety? And was there an impact on the outcome of that election?
Yeah, sure. 100 years ago, for the 1918 and 1920 elections, the United States was in the middle of an earlier pandemic, the influenza pandemic, sometimes referred to as Spanish flu. And that pandemic in many ways is similar to ours today. It necessitated many public safety measures, including wearing masks and social distancing. So in 1918, you had the midterm elections. And if you look at old newspapers from the time, you'll see a number of articles that discuss these the safety issues and is it safe to vote? And what happened was in some parts of the country, the polls were opened regularly and people could vote as usual. In other parts of the country, it was considered not so safe and it was much harder for people to vote in those areas. In terms of numbers, the data shows that only 40% of eligible voters voted in the midterm elections of 1918, and that's a decrease of about 10% from the previous midterm election, where about 50% of eligible voters voted. It's a little tricky to evaluate because there was a lot of tumult at the time. In October of 1918, just in the month of October, close to 200,000 Americans died of the flu. Plus, with World War I, there were many young American men who were fighting and who were not able to vote. The voters in that election did vote for change. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives went from majority Democratic to majority Republican. But whether voters were voting for change in relation to the pandemic or in relation to World War I and US foreign policies, that's not fully clear. And same thing with 2020. 2020 is the, 1920. 1920 is the presidential election. It was William Harding, a Republican, versus James Cox, who was the Democrat. Wilson, a Democrat, had been the president for the 8 years prior. Harding won in a landslide. So there seems to be a sense that voters wanted change. In fact, one of Harding's slogans was "Return to normalcy," return to normal times. But it seems that the issues that voters were responding to, it's not clear. Were they responding more to the pandemic, or were they responding to this whole new set of issues with World War I and the League of Nations and the Treaty of Versailles? And other foreign policy issues on which many Americans had disagreed with Wilson and the Democrats at the time. So yes, absolutely. Americans 100 years ago faced some similar sets of issues in terms of safety and voting.
Powerful insights is how sometimes history will continue to sort of replay over the generations and through the years, of course, with new nuances and of course with new sets of lenses, but interesting. So I want to ask you, Professor Ritsatos, Dino, the laws exist in many states preventing the review of absentee ballots until some period after Election Day, which could mean that the results of the 2020 U.S. presidential election are not known for some time. Is it a major concern, historically or otherwise, not to have the results on Election Day?
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, in the earlier decades, especially in the 19th century, it took quite some time for information to trickle to its source. And as a result, it took a few days, if not a few weeks, to know who actually won. One of the reasons that there's a lame duck period or a stretch of time from the election day to the inauguration day, which for most of American history up until the 1920s was all the way into March. Now it's on January 20th. But it gives time for the new administration to get its self-organized, get its prospective cabinet together. So there is a history of a process that is taking place. The results don't come out right away. Now, what's very interesting is prior to the 2000 election, there really hasn't been a close presidential election. At least for 100 years. The closest one would have been 1876 with Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden, which spiraled out of control. That kind of mimicked what went on in Florida in 2000 with protesters and counter-protesters, although there was some violence in the 1876 election. But I mean, you look at those are very exceptional. Prior to that, the winning side really won comfortably. So the results, even though not all the tallies and totals came out, and it would take, even to this day, it takes sometimes weeks to get a final vote total. But if the trend is one way and it's very obvious, you know, you can project who's going to be the winner. And we're all accustomed to that because really in the last 50 years, again, prior to the 2000 elections, the winner won comfortably. There was really no close selection in modern times prior to 2000. It was really huge victories. I would even refer to them as landslide victories. So as a result, you could know the winner. In some cases, I believe it was the 1980 election on TV. They announced the winner in it was Ronald Reagan, I believe in the first 25 minutes when they states didn't even return results yet. And they were already basing exit poll totals and they announced the president. But it's built, I think, into our mindset and into our way of seeing things of, you know, quick results. And we're in a society where we want information, we want answers, we want them very quickly. We don't want to wait, you know, and especially in, again, back to what I said before, we're in a digital era. So we want instant results if possible. And it's not always going to be that case. And elections are close. And when you have an election that is unique in its nature, such as this one, I think most experts would agree that it's probably going to take some time after Election Day before you get a clear picture of who the winner is going to be.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
David, 5 U.S. presidents were elected to office but lost the popular vote. What happens if there's a tie in the Electoral College?
Well, in short, man, I almost feel like Elizabeth Warren here. We have a plan for that. And in short, you know, you have this whole flow chart on my screen on the right.
Sure.
Basically, the House of Representatives will vote for the president if it comes down to it. But something that stands out to me from the chart on the left is that, you know, I often hear from people that we live in unprecedented times. And I'm like, no, we don't. We've always been a very fractured society. You know, we've always been a nation of immigrants with a relentless xenophobic streak. We've always been a country where access to the ballot and voter suppression is there right alongside our democratic ideals. And we've always been a country that has failed to but strived to live up to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. But what I do find unprecedented is if I look at these 5 elections here, right? In 4 of them, where the person who won the popular vote lost the election, the winner, the true president, has made huge, you know, if you win an election with less than a strong mandate from the public, what you'll usually do is reach out and try to explain your views and actions, right? You barely won, you better get your enemies on your side. And we've seen a president that doesn't make many attempts to do that. That's what I find unprecedented. So this brings us back to the big question, though. Why do we have an electoral college in the first place? And how does it work? Basically, 270 is the magic number. We get the number of electors by assigning a point value to each state. That point value will be the number of people from the House of Representatives plus the people from the Senate. Add them together, there you go, right? So it's pretty simple math. What this means, though, is you're giving disproportionate political power to the small states because their 2 senators is equal to those of the big states. How did we get there? Well, first is weird. We are the only nation in the world that elects its head of state this way. And we got there, in a word, through the one thing that's at the root of pretty much anything that doesn't go well in America, and that's slavery. James Madison, man, this dude is in a closed door meeting, Philadelphia, trying to make the Constitution. And he says straight up, he says, a popular election of the president is what makes sense. However, I know that my people in Virginia, who are a very powerful political force, we don't have a lot of people. So what we need is some other system. And what we ended up was a world where electoral delegates are expected to vote in alignment with the popular vote from that state. And in most states, that's a winner-take-all system. So this electoral college thing that we have is quirky, it's unusual, and it's also something that gives disproportionate political power to the states with fewer people.
And it's kind of interesting because it has become such an important question for so many people today. Should we still have an electoral college? Is it the right way for us now, given what we've seen over the course of the history of the country? So thank you for that really important explanation. All right, let's go to another polling question. All right, here's the question. Those of you who are watching, who are listening, who are participating, do you feel hopeful or optimistic about electoral participation in the country? And I'll ask it this way. Do you feel more than I did before this panel, less than I did before this panel, or about the same? Do you feel hopeful or optimistic about electoral participation in the country? So just take a moment and answer that poll question, please. And what's been going on in the chat has been very, very extraordinary. Lots of good information about great information about just about anything you want to know about the electoral process and how you can get the help that you need. So important. Great resources here. All right, so here's what folks said. They feel about the same. So, some of you have said that you feel a little bit more optimistic, some about the same. Interesting. I think that, when you have these kinds of opportunities to talk, it's very important to get good information that people probably don't have or don't remember from many of the civic classes that you may have had many, many years ago. We do have a question for the panel that came, will they ever change the electoral college process, and how can someone get the popular vote in the presidential election and not win? Why does the electoral process exist? So we've kind of had that question answered by sort of David, but anything else you all want to say about the electoral college?
Well, I would want to add, Dr. Baston, if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the criticisms of not having an electoral college, of sticking to the popular vote, is almost certainly going to come from the smaller states. And the argument would be that if a person is running for the presidency and it's a popular vote, he would never need to go to 44 out of the 50 states. They would not be relevant in his campaigning. He would stick to the high populated states and make pledges and make promises, as every candidate does in a campaign, to those states, and ignore the other 80% of the states because they do not have the populace that is of numbers, of sizable numbers. A lot of the, the heartland, the parts of the Great Plains, the Rockies, the parts of the Midwest, and even, some of the border states, they're not heavily populated. So the worry would be from those states that they would be underrepresented. And that's why those are the most adamant in preserving the Electoral College, because it allows them to have some representation. There's a reason why the caucuses or the primaries start in states like Iowa and New Hampshire. These are very small states if you compare them to New York, Florida, Texas, or California.
But you think about it, it's the old conversation about taxation without representation. And so if you're going to all be responsible for participating in the taxation policies of the country, and you're not then going to have the level of representation and you still have the same level of expectation, that could be problematic. So great point. Another question that came up, and then I'll go to you, David. Is there any possible path to a legitimate third-party candidate? David, did you want to say something? And then if you want to just touch on that as well.
Yeah, sure. You're not going to get a third party, first of all, and be careful what you wish for, because we've had the party systems flip a couple times. The first time it happened is instructive. It led to a civil war, right? So we got the party system, and it's here. It's deeply flawed. George Washington warned us about it, but it's here to stay. But I was going to also just contribute a little bit along with what Dino was saying. You know, with the Electoral College, I mean, if you follow news, Trump has been campaigning. He's been going hard in Pennsylvania, Ohio. These are what we see as swing states. So with the Electoral College, Trump's never going to come campaign in New York or California because those are reliably Democratic states. He's going to focus his attention on the states that are going to be what we call key battleground states. So in a way, the system makes it so that a president only needs to worry about those battleground states. And that's really unfair. If you're a conservative New Yorker, in the Electoral College, your voice doesn't matter. And I'll tell you what, I'm coming at you from Ulster County. If you go north of me or west of me, you live in Trump country. And your voice doesn't matter in a presidential election because we know that New York's electoral points are probably going to go towards Joe Biden, right? So it's a system that makes political minorities in their various states irrelevant, and it heightens the power and the influence of any state that's going to have a close or expectedly close turnout.
And interestingly enough, then we saw what we saw in 2016, where you saw traditionally, quote unquote, blue wall states have their electoral votes go to the Republican in that race. So it's interesting to determine how one starts to look at the map and how one decides to try to create the messages that appeal to the populace. I mean, when you look at the 1980 election, a very interesting election of sort of an incumbent that was not as well received because of a lot of the actual turmoil that was happening in the country internationally and nationally. And then just 4 years later, upon the re-election process, he wins 49 states. And so you have sort of this speak to us, any of you, about sort of how the populace and what's happening within the culture of the country can have a connection to outcomes in the elections that we have, presidential elections most specifically. How do the cultural revolutions, if you will, influence electoral politics for president? Anyone?
I'll jump in on that because I see Willie Everett's comments in the chat.
Sure.
Look, the only time in American history that a third party rose to prominence and power was the Republican Party, which was the party of the abolitionist movement. And within 10 years of them becoming created, they seized the White House with Abraham Lincoln. We look upon Lincoln very favorably, and for good reason. But we also have to realize that we were a deeply divided society. In 14 states, you could not vote for him. His name wasn't even on the ballot, right? So I think if you see political divisions and you look at them through a cultural lens, you can see that Americans are looking at they're looking at the same thing, but they're seeing something completely differently. I use that example of his party being born and seizing power. And when that happens, that means something broke in the system. And when something breaks in a system, violence fixes it. And in our case, it took, depending how you count them up, man, somewhere between 680 and 800,000 people before we can start to heal from that conflict.
Christina, what do you think about the influence of cultural, what's happening in the culture, and then how that impacts presidential politics?
Well, I think the one point, I would emphasize is, and this is something that's not new. It's been this way for a long time, but often older generations vote in much larger numbers than younger people. And, we're looking at this 21st century, enormous change, globalization, all sorts of massive change on so many different levels. And, I think it's really critical that younger people vote and in large numbers, because I think a lot of times people think, all right, well, if my candidate doesn't win, what was the point? But the reality is that campaigns throughout the country look at the data, they're looking at the demographics, are younger people voting? And the 21st century, it's this, it's the century that belongs to the younger generation, and I think it's just really critical that large numbers of younger people not only be involved on social media, but are out there voting and involved in other very concrete ways, so that political candidates take them seriously. So I mean, that would be my sort of really main point. It's an issue that concerns me greatly, because it's I think more important now, more important now than ever, that younger people, people in their 20s and 30s get their voice heard.
And let's talk just a second for the power of generational shifts. So we saw in 1992 that there was a shift from the greatest generation, that meaning the World War II generation, to the baby boomer generation with the election of Bill Clinton. And then you saw the election of Barack Obama, which was a different generational shift. So now, right after that presidency, you've seen a shift to back to the baby boomer generation. So can you talk a little bit about how generational shifts have had an influence on electoral politics? And any of you can jump in on that one.
I find it's
if at all,
that we have the oldest presidential race in our country's history. When you look at the portraits, you go to the National Portrait Gallery's website, you can take a virtual tour. All these portraits are just old dead white guys. And here we are, 2020, and we got the two oldest presidential candidates ever. And I have to wonder if young voters, liberal and conservatively oriented, are going to identify with either of those candidates, as a matter of fact. So maybe that's a generation that, it seems like whenever Democrats are losing, they say we need the young people. It's this like weird pattern that I've noticed. And I have to wonder if young people are going to be interested in coming out, because they didn't in great numbers in our last election.
Dino?
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you look at the way Trump won in 2016, he tapped into a segment of the population that felt that they were not represented by, even within the Republican Party itself, they were not represented by the traditional leadership that ran the party. And he presented himself as an outsider, as a person who didn't have political experience. So he's not going to be the typical politician where he says one thing when he runs and does another thing when he's elected. So he campaigned on that, and he tapped into something. And I think that resonated with a lot of voters, because many of his voters in 2016 were people who hadn't voted in the previous election. So he was able to really, tap on an energy and build on it. He ran against 16 other Republicans. And if you look at the primaries, he swept through these primaries. And here's a guy without any political experience. And, the pundits were always wondering, how could this be? What's going on? And they failed to see that he was able to attract older voters, but they were not traditional voters. They were voters who just had no confidence in either of the previous candidates. So I think he was successful in doing that, and he caught a lot of people off guard. Whether it happens again remains to be seen, but I would say that that's one of his areas of success, that he was able to really tap into that. And it was mostly, again, older voters, an older generation, but not as politically active or involved as your typical voters. Some voters are just they pretty much have their minds made up, and other voters wait to the very end because they're on the fence as to what to do. So he was able to bring in a third group that would normally not be part of this equation, and I think that's what helped bring him over the top.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, Dino mentioned primaries. Primaries have a very underappreciated role in the political polarized world that we live in. I mentioned earlier that these down ticket ballot elections, off presidential cycle elections, tend to have lower turnout, and that's where we vote for these local offices that affect us, right? So there's been so much written and said about how social media and the internet and cable news have created this seemingly irreparable rift between red and blue states and red and blue people. But the primaries, right? It used to be that parties got their nominee by just posting up a political insider. And if you had 2 or 3 political insiders, it was literally like smoky backroom deals. We wanted more transparency in who the parties ran, and we wanted more direct engagement from citizens about who our parties are going to run. But who goes to primary elections? Usually the most committed voters. Who are the most committed voters? The most ideologically extreme voters. So because this primary system, both parties are susceptible or vulnerable from being hijacked by radicals. And you have to consider that as something that's contributed to this growing rift between Democrats and Republicans in this country.
So I do have one final question for all of you. I'm going to start with our wonderful Dr. Christina Stern. Do you feel hopeful or optimistic about electoral participation in the country?
For this election, fairly hopeful. I think the indicators so far are very strong. As David had mentioned before, it seems like there are lines left and right all over the place on early voting. It seems that large numbers of people have voted through mail-in already. So it looks like there will be pretty high participation. At least that's what the indicators seem to suggest so far. So from a participation viewpoint, I'm feeling pretty hopeful.
Thank you so much, Professor Dino. I keep saying you're wrong. Ritsatos. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing it earlier. So do you feel hopeful or optimistic about electoral participation in the country?
Oh, yes, 100%. The media loves to sensationalize things and make it look like there's going to be a huge rift and uprising if the election is too close. But I think when all is said and done, the system is designed to work. It may not be designed to work best in the closest of elections, but it is designed to work. And in the end, things will work out. There will be a complete election. There will be a vote tally. If it's too close to be determined and, courts have to get involved, well, that's one of the reasons they're there for. And the process will go through the process. And in the end, there is a system in place for a legitimate result. And yeah, overall, I'm confident that, things will work out. There will be unhappy people one way or another. I mean, when it's this close, there's really not much you can do. But I'm confident and hopeful that in the end, the process, I have faith in it. And I think it's designed to work. And even in close elections, it's going to work. And we'll get through this one way or another.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, our very own Dr. David Lucander. Do you feel hopeful or optimistic about electoral participation in our country?
Wish you asked this question to me before Professor Ritsatos, because I love his optimism, but I don't share it. Although I am a deeply optimistic person by nature, just read Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan. He says that people are too self-centered, too ignorant, too brutish to be trusted to run their own affairs. And we've done pretty good so far. But I also got to take Hobbes's prescient critique in mind. When I think about some of the knuckleheads that I grew up with, some of my own family members, you're letting them people vote? Really? So when we talk about voter turnout, be careful what you ask for. Right? Be very careful what you ask for. That said, I think we're going to be all right. As Frederick Douglass notably said, we ought to have a government so shaped that even in the hands of one bad man, we shall be safe. And our system has withstood presidents who have been corrupt, incompetent, lazy, and self-serving. And we've stood the test of time for more than 2 centuries. So although I don't share the optimism, and I deeply fear political violence in November and the months after that, I do have my personal sense of optimism that we're going to be all right.
Thank you so much. I just end with this. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among those are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is my fervent hope as we have these kinds of conversations that we continue to advance the cause of liberty and justice for all, as we continue to recognize that our country has the opportunity to live in the fullness of its expectations, the lofty goals that were written in many of our founding instruments. They can be made living through the example of the good people. And so I want to thank all of these fantastic historians who have helped us today. I want to thank all of you that have participated by listening, by asking great questions, and by helping us as an institution to begin to engage in these fantastic discussions. I want to thank our very own Melissa Roy, who is our Chief Diversity Officer and who is doing a magnificent job bringing these fantastic conversations before us so that we can advance the cause of inclusive excellence. And that starts by bringing everybody's voice in. So thank you so much for participating. And Melissa Roy, is there anything else you'd like to say to us before we sign off at this time?
Thank you. I want to join in by saying thank you for everyone who participated, the moderator, the panelists, the audience. It has been a fascinating conversation, one that I've enjoyed listening to, watching the comments in the chat as well. I want to remind everybody that, of course, your vote matters. If you don't participate, you don't have a right to complain. We have an opportunity to affect how our government acts and governs us by participating, as Dr. Lucander mentioned earlier, at all levels of government. So voting locally, voting for our state elections, and voting nationally. Thanks again to everyone for joining us, and please look forward to future discussions about relevant topics. Thank you.